What Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome back to the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, talking NFC North. We've already made it through 5 divisions, Sam, and we've given every single team a ton of love.
Yes.
Right?
Too much love, according to you. You want to go shorter.
I've just suggested that we just keep it tight.
I don't know if you have the stamina anymore in season 9 for these shows.
I think what happens is...
You're getting old.
I think you need new material. I think we both need new material. We might repeat ourselves every now and again, but
Look,
this is the ultimate preview looking forward to 2020.
Just last show, I started talking about the positives of speed Rubik's Cube solving. That's new material.
That was new.
If ever there was new material.
Definitely new material.
So, yeah, don't criticize my originality.
All right, let's just dive right in. By the way, PFF.com, we still have CFB 25. 25% off our new college football product, which is hot off the shelves. We actually have college grading available. The fans have been asking for this for years.
Yeah, and the Big Ten may be parking it for a while, but there's a bunch of college football that is actually getting played. And for the first time ever, you're going to be able to see all that data on PFF.com. Also, the draft guide is out. Proof that Mike Renner actually does something.
I was wondering what he was doing for the last 4 months.
Right. The draft guide is out there looking pretty. So
it is good.
A whole bunch of cool stuff up on PFF.com.
So go check it. We have Edge and Elite. You can get the draft guide as a part of those subscriptions, and then the new subscription, college football stats, premium stats, and the massive college football preview magazine that was put together was really spectacular. So that's CFB 25. You get 25% off just that particular college product, and then you have Edge and Elite. So go check it out, PFF.com. We are going to the NFC North today. I know I say it about every division, but this is wide open, right? This is a deep one.
Yeah, so my overview thought of this division, I've been on a few radio hits recently, Green Bay ones, Chicago ones, and my thought generally...
A little Bill Michaels show? Doing a little Bill Michaels? Yeah.
My thought has been that I think the Packers win this division. We'll get to that later, but it almost feels like the entirety of this division got worse in the offseason.
That's why it's going to be
You know
close.
what I mean? Like, there's a lot of these divisions where this team got better, and they needed to because the other 3 got better as well, and this is going to be a tough division. This one felt like, I don't think the Packers got any better, but I think the Vikings got worse. I think
Lions got better.
Did they? Because they traded away Darius Slay, and their number 1 rookie is expected to basically mitigate that problem.
Compared to last year, yeah. We'll get to him. We'll get to him in a minute. All right, let's start with the Bears, okay?
Yes.
We obviously have to start and discuss the quarterback situation. We've got Mitchell back for year 4, and we have Nick Foles in the mix.
So this is a great example, right? Because in theory, Nick Foles is a significant upgrade over Mitchell Trubisky.
In what theory?
What do you mean in what theory?
A significant upgrade?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you not understand how bad Trubisky was?
There's 10 games of evidence that Nick Foles is better. Other than
right,
that,
but there's 0 games of evidence that Trubisky's better. But anyway, in theory, Foles is an upgrade. But you had to trade to make it happen. It's cost you a decent chunk of salary because he's on that absurd contract. And, as you say, there's bad Nick Foles as well. I think the point, though, that stands in his favor is that Foles at least has a history of, responding well to quarterback-friendly environments.
He does.
And this, I think, is still fundamentally a quarterback-friendly environment, though Trubisky is so bad that he has essentially defeated the quarterback-friendly system. So I think plugging any viable quarterback into that system is immediately an upgrade. But my point is, in theory, you upgrade at the QB position, but the deal to make that happen was sufficiently bad that it's not great. It's not great, Bob.
Well, let's start with the Foles discussion. I want to pull up the number that I've been using when describing his volatility over the last few years. I tweeted this out a couple years ago. So it was based off of Nick Foles in 2017 and 18, those 2 years that he took over for Carson Wentz. And Foles had the 2 highest graded games of any Eagles quarterback in 2017 and 18. Now, Wentz had like the next 8, but then Foles had the next 3. So Foles had like 5 out of the top 10 highest graded games while playing only a fraction of the games that Wentz played during that time. Foles also had the 2 worst and 4 out of the 5 worst. So we're talking about like Carson Wentz, pretty consistent every single week in 2017 and 18, and Foles just like a roller coaster of emotions out there, including his 2 best games being the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl, the only 2 games that were graded above 90 during that time.
Yeah, we've said this before, but like Jameis Winston might be the most volatile quarterback in the NFL throw to throw. In terms of like one throw, it's a beautiful dime down the seam, perfect play. The next, it's a horrific interception over the middle that you're like, what on earth are you doing? Foles might be the most volatile quarterback in the NFL week to week, right? Like you either get this phenomenal Super Bowl caliber quarterback or you get this guy that looks like he's not even, like he's worse than Mitchell Trubisky and very little in between. Like he swings from one extreme to the next.
There was nothing in 2017 that said, like, sure, the Eagles are going to be great in the playoffs with Nick Foles. Like, he was coming off of terrible regular season performances, and even his first, the divisional round with the Eagles wasn't that good. It was statistically, it was poor throwing-wise, and then he just went on that run. So Foles, you just don't know what you're going to get. The other thing that we said, though, last year with him going to Jacksonville, Foles can generally, like, at least take care of the football, at least not turn it over. So if the Bears' defense can creep back toward 2018 levels, they could be safe.
Yeah, I mean,
give me a look. Do you have a look?
No, I was. So I've unfortunately left some clutter on the thing behind me there, but I was looking up at the monitor here, and you're a sufficiently large human being that you actually hide most of my clutter, so it works. It's okay.
You making fun of my hips?
No, I'm just saying that you're a large.
I'm self-conscious about my hips right now.
You're a large human. You're almost 300 pounds worth of person.
Yeah, I saw the wheels turning. I didn't know.
Yeah. So
I'm blocking.
Look, if it was anybody else, we'd have some problems. And I was briefly considering whether I should get up here, go and like hide it away, and come back. But then I looked and I saw, you know what, Steve's most of the time he's hiding it, so I'm probably okay.
We're in a nice professional studio right now. Could you at least start acting professional?
I literally was complaining that people were leaving clutter over there, and then I go and do it without thinking.
That's embarrassing.
No, it's a disaster. Anyway,
back to the Bears.
Yeah.
Folesy.
Yes.
What are you thinking? So who's going to start? Like, is Trubisky actually going to have a shot here, or is it going to be Foles?
How can you trade for that contract and still give Trubisky the starting gig?
Because it's a sunk cost. I mean, you really.
It wasn't a sunk cost before you did it. It was Jacksonville's sunk cost.
Now it's sunk, and I mean, again, the whole thing with money. We just saw the Chiefs with like 38 cents of cap space lock up every significant player for the next 12 years. I mean, like, they're fine. How much does money even matter? Like, at some point, it's like the thing that they gave up for Foles isn't the millions they're paying. They gave up a fourth. Like, that's what they gave up.
And the money, though. Here's the thing. Like,
did it keep them from signing someone else? Did it keep them from drafting someone?
So Jacksonville, there's degrees of this, right? Most of the time, I'm kind of on your side of this, which is, look, you shouldn't let the idea that you're stuck with this thing keeping you from putting somebody obviously better in there, right?
Thank you.
And I think that would have been really interesting to do in Jacksonville, right? You sign Foles to this ludicrous contract, and then, oh, look, Minshew comes along, and he's younger, cheaper, and probably better. So I don't think that the money should have prevented them from keeping both them on the roster and saying, hey, look, Minshew's going to be the starter, but you're a really useful insurance policy, and albeit an expensive one, but we can afford it because Minshew's on like $5.42 as a 6th-round rookie. But then, so I think it's different that you're Chicago, and this offseason, you finally admitted, look, this Trubisky thing's a mess. We need to change something at the quarterback position. And of all the potential options for this offseason, and there were a lot of them, right? The Teddy Bridgewaters, the Andy Daltons of the world, the Cam Newtons, the Marcus Mariotas, the Jameis Winstons, of all of the various options, the thing you decided to do was to trade for Nick Foles and his bloated-ass contract, right? To then, a couple of months later, with almost no preseason and very little training camp, to go, you know what? Actually, he's not any better than Trubisky. You would look like a freaking moron. Like, you just can't do that. You can. If the conclusion you come to at the end of training camp is, you know what, Trubisky's better than Foles, you might as well just resign and leave right now. Like, you can't put him back in. You just have to say, we're riding with Foles. There's no other option. You can't.
Yeah.
Everybody in that building would have to resign and commit, Harry Curry or whatever it is.
I would say that's the only part of it is that they made the choice to go get him out of all the other options. I'd say that is.
Therefore, they're stuck with it. You can't. It's not the same as Jacksonville, who suddenly got presented with a different option. Like, that was the thing you determined to do, and you've traded for it. You went with the worst possible scenario, right? The only way of proving to people that you weren't idiots, which is what they're saying you were for doing that, is to actually start the guy and try and get something out of him.
Well, let's discuss what he has.
Yes.
And the rest of the supporting cast. The Bears offense went from good play calling, Allen Robinson plus some other, somewhat unique, pass catchers that turned them into a pretty nice 2018 offense. An offensive line that went from when you just looked, you're like average. They were the team that was average across the board, therefore had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL until last year when they all regressed, particularly at tackle. Charles Leno and Bobby Massey both regressed, had terrible seasons. Leno graded in the 50s, Massey a 63. They were both in the bottom third at their respective positions. So everything got worse last year. And then they got 15 tight ends, on the depth chart. I look at those moves and think it's more curious. Like, it's not like tight end was this massive issue, and they went and paid for Jimmy Graham and then spent a second-round pick, which was their first pick, Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame, who's like, he was probably the best all-around tight end in the draft in an underwhelming, tight end draft, essentially. He can run block a little bit, he's big, but he's not dynamic. Like, I don't know what you're getting out of him in the second round.
The Jimmy Graham move was bizarre. Like, so when he signed with the Packers, it made some sense, right? It's like, hey, he hasn't been what he was in the past. It didn't really work with Russell Wilson, but there's a case to be made that the way Aaron Rodgers plays is actually useful for Jimmy Graham, right?
Yeah.
And that didn't really work, right? So at that point, when that didn't work and Russell Wilson didn't work, it's like, all right, now 2 of the best 10 quarterbacks in the NFL couldn't get crap out of Jimmy Graham, and you are adding him to the Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles mix as a plus. Like, what do you expect to happen?
I remember, I keep saying this, last year just felt like the year of the slow tight end, and I've mentioned Jason Witten, I've mentioned the Patriots, got, offensive lineman caliber tight ends, speed-wise, and then Jimmy Graham just looked like slow, and like, here's this off-target throw from Rodgers, and he can barely adjust to it and all that stuff. So there's just a lot of tight ends like that around
Jimmy
the
Graham,
NFL right now.
The last 3 years, has now had PFF grades of 66, 59.6, and 58. Yeah. Like, if you're grading in the 50s as a tight end, you're not very good anymore.
So that's potentially an issue. I think the playmakers, though, Allen Robinson's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He can win on the outside, good contested catch guy, good route runner. He's got that combo, right? Anthony Miller, you're still waiting for him to break out a little bit, but, I think he's got that solid number 2 type of ability. And then Ted Ginn, wasn't great last year and all that stuff, but he still has the deep speed and all that stuff. I mean, is a complimentary deep guy, right? He could be okay. And Foles, if you talk about Foles, if there's the play, like when he has those runs, it's when he starts dropping like 50-yard dimes in there and stuff like that. So like if you have a Ginn,
the play he got hurt on,
help.
right? In Jacksonville was like a deep bomb to DJ Chark.
Yeah.
Like he actually got hurt on like a +1 deep dime.
And if you want to know why Foles is volatile, go back and listen to the last episode, the NFC East, and my description of Daniel Jones. And I described Jones as a Nick Foles type coming out of the draft. And it's that when you go and you just tick off the traits, Foles, it's like toughness, makes plays under pressure, makes plays in the face of pressure, doesn't care. He's not oblivious to it, but he's aggressive or oblivious, right? He's Foles.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
And that's what leads to the wide ranges of outcomes with Foles.
Adam Schefter on the PFF forecast, which you should go listen to, made a point that, this year with the no preseason, the truncated training camp, all those kinds of things, this feels like a year that a weird team that nobody's talking about could like come out of nowhere and suddenly actually be really good. No fans in the stands, maybe home field advantage disappears, like all these weird things that are unique to this season. the Bears to me feel like a team where the fundamentals exist for this team to be good, right? Like, this was a team I think that was set up to be really good if Trubisky was just viable. And then he not only did he not take a step forward, but he actually went the other way and became so bad that they had to start dismantling everything around him, right? This sort of quarterback-friendly system, which fundamentally, remember, is the same thing that they're running in Kansas City and in Philadelphia in terms of, a ton of RPOs, a ton of things that are really useful for like free offensive production, right? Yeah. Because they just stress defenses. Trubisky was so bad that Matt Nagy had to start scaling back on all that stuff, right? In theory, to make it even easier for him to operate, but all it did is like made everything worse, right? Because he didn't get any better with the pared down version, and all of the useful stuff that you took away made a difference. So everything just sunk and got worse. But I think that Nick Foles, as I say, his history shows that in those kinds of systems, he can take advantage of free schemed up yards, right? And every now and again, he'll go on a run where he puts it all together, and that's where you get like amazing Foles and amazing production, all that kind of stuff. So, as you said, the offensive line took a big step back last year, as did everything else. I think fundamentally it's a decent unit. I think fundamentally the weapons are decent, right? Robinson, Cordero Patterson is this X factor, useful play.
He's in the running back room right now. Ted
Ginn is, I think, is still a viable deep threat. Remember last year he was paired with Drew Brees, whose deep ball has evaporated.
Yep.
Anthony Miller, we're still waiting, but I think he's useful.
Riley Ridley, decent route runner.
Right. Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, they're still decent running backs along with Patterson. Tight end is a question mark, but there's like 15 of them, so maybe one of them will be useful. I think fundamentally the offense, or the pieces on offense are there for them to be good. And defense, the same thing, right? There's still a lot of talent there. So as much as nobody expects the Bears to be any good because of last year, I think this is a team that could surprise out of nowhere and actually be really, particularly in this division where, as I say, I think everyone got worse. This team could jump everybody.
I think they could be solid offensively at least. We'll talk about the defense in a second. I wouldn't be surprised if both tackles bounce back. James Daniels, when he and Cody Whitehair flipped last year, they flipped positions halfway through the year. Daniels moving to guard and Whitehair back to center. Both graded pretty well there. The only massive question should be Rashad Coward, who graded a 51.7 last year, replacing Kyle Long, who retired and wasn't himself when he was playing last year. Everything should be solid offensively and could be.
Yeah.
And then you've got this range of outcomes with Foles and just kind of see where it lands. So, yes, they could be good. Defensively, I always start the PFF way, back to front. So I'm starting in the secondary. My concern here is just comparing to the 2018 team when they did have the best defense in the league. There's no more Adrian Amos, who is very good. I don't care what you say, Bears fans. He's very good. And he was very good last year for the Green Bay Packers. Not having him, not having a Prince Amukamara over there. We loved Jalen Johnson in the draft, and he's, but you're talking about a, first-round caliber rookie that they got in the second round. You're talking about him stepping in and being a starter potentially right here, and he's not even – he's battling Kevin Tolliver for that job right now.
Well, he's also battling injury to get back in the first place. Artie Burns going down opens the door for Jalen Johnson to be like the immediate starter, and I think fundamentally that would be the right thing anyway. But he's A, being thrust into the starting gig, B, working with no preseason and a shortened training camp, and C, like battling injury just to get back and get the reps in the first place. So that dude is like fighting seriously uphill to be good right out of the gate.
So I've got concerns at number 2. Kyle Fuller's solid, but he's not great. Mm-hmm. Number 2 corner, and then Buster Skrine. Again, remember that 2018 team had Bryce Callahan, and he's good, and he was good in the slot at a valuable position. I just think that the 2018 team was good, and it was a lot of, it's Khalil Mack and it's Akeem Hicks up front, and they were excellent that year. But that was as strong of a just secondary 1 to 5 as we saw in the NFL. And now I look at it and I'm like, Eddie Jackson's really good. And then the next 4, Tayshaun Gibson, Kyle Fuller, I just don't know. And that's where I have concerns.
How does Buster Skrine keep getting jobs?
I don't know. He gets jobs kind of like the guard. He's just like the guard that has a lot of
his career baseline in terms of PFF grade is like 50s. which we just talked about on the offensive line, is like, or the tight end is not a good place to be. His coverage grade is actually worse than that as a baseline.
I honestly don't know, because it's like when an offensive lineman, to me, it's easier to you feel like you can hide bad offensive linemen.
Well, you can,
because they're still going to win most of their reps. Like a slot corner that grades poorly for us is probably getting torched like right in front of your face a lot.
Like a bad offensive line who gets beat on a play is allowing pressure, which can still be nothing, right? Like a quarterback can mitigate that, get the ball away, and it doesn't even count, right? A bad, like a guy getting torched in coverage is probably getting targeted, at which point it's a touchdown or whatever, right? You know what the highest coverage grade he's ever had in a season is?
63 or something?
61.4. For his career, he's been beaten for a passer rating of 100. He's allowed 44 touchdowns and had just 9 interceptions. And he's got 66 penalties in all that.
What?
Yeah.
So that part I don't get. I get like the fact that Seattle rolls out there every year with like a subpar offensive line and still like, hey, we got a good offense. Like they still feel like it's good.
Yeah.
Again, I get it, because most like the offensive linemen are still going to win more than they're going to lose, and you kind of like lose that baseline of where the rest of the NFL is. With a slot corner, it should be obvious. So I think Screen has bounced around and really struggled.
It was like a brief period between Cleveland and the Jets where it was like, all right, he was in Cleveland, he showed some flashes, and Cleveland's like that's, you don't get good players there. So with the Jets, he'll be way better, right? And then with the Jets, it was like, you know what, actually, turns out he's the same guy, and he's just not great. And now we're still giving him, he's still employed, playing a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so Khalil Mack is coming off of the lowest grade that he's had since his rookie year, and it's his lowest run defense grade and his lowest pass rush grade over the last couple of years. I don't have massive concerns about Khalil Mack. I think he'll still be fine. He's still really good. Akeem Hicks is still really good. The Bears are going to come down to, as much as we talk about the offense and what Foles does, it's going to depend on Foles and the volatility. I think the secondary for me is just a massive question mark. And I don't know, like when Vic Fangio was there too, I felt more comfortable about his scheme. We talked about this with the AFC West and Denver. I feel better about his scheme protecting those guys a little bit. I don't know that the Bears are equipped there.
I also think the personnel sort of fits this, but they actually need to be deployed a certain way for them to get the maximum out of this. Certainly the defensive front, right? You bring in a guy like Robert Quinn, who I think is still fundamentally a really talented pass rusher and can be a big part of getting pressure opposite Khalil Mack. But Quinn needs to be deployed with his hand in the ground. Like if you're going to put him where Leonard Floyd was and say, stand up, whatever, 2-point stance, do what you like, but rush the passer, he's not going to be good. Like we've seen that he's one of those guys. There's a few of them. Every now and again, you get these guys that, from an alignment standpoint, this idea of 2 versus 3-point stance, 3-4, 4-3, they're lined up in the same spot, like identically. They're in the exact same technique. I'm like dead opposite you, whether I'm in a 2-point or a 3-point stance. There's no difference, right? But there are players that rely on the coil that you get from having your hand in the ground, being able to like load up and burst off the line. And those first couple of steps is how they win. And in particular, that's always been how Robert Quinn's won, right? Like we talked about it last time, that you need a counter. Quinn's like the one guy ever that's not needed to counter, right? That guy just wins around the edge almost every single time. And in order to do that, he needs the hand in the ground to get those first 2 steps. If you have him from a 2-point stance, he can't explode off the line anymore. So he can't win the way he wins, at which point he doesn't win, period. So they need to have him deployed that way. And, the systems or the alignments that Chuck Pagano has used over the years, they have been that kind of hybrid front where you've had a mix of down linemen and 2-point stance guys. But there's a specific sort of sequence that these guys basically need to be aligned in now for that to be effective.
They have Barkevious Mingo, though, so it's okay.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
And it doesn't matter if he's in a 3-point stance or not.
Of course not.
He's the same guy.
Equally ineffective either way, yeah.
So I was doing some research, actually, for an article on PFF.com. I was looking at
Mingo?
Well, Mingo came up. It was the critical factors on the 2021 draft class.
Mingo's critical factors.
Yeah, he's still working on his.
Yeah.
And essentially, the guy that is the highest graded pass rusher for us is a guy named Chris Rump from Duke.
Okay.
He's listed at 6'3", 225. Yeah. And, even Mike Renner in the draft guide One of his, and I try not to read the draft guide until I watch the player. I like to watch the player first
Right.
and then go see what Mike said. And he, I'm watching Rumpf and I'm like, man, he is just so skinny and he's just light. And I'm always wondering, we've discussed this a million times, how light is just too light when you're translating to the NFL. So I looked up the best pass rushers that were under 240 pounds. And in the last decade, there's only 2 guys with even good grades. And it was Chris Clemens and Robert
Clemens
Mathis.
was under 240?
He was listed at 234 or something like that, and
Wow.
then Robert Mathis. And again, I'm going off listed weight. We know that like NFL players can fluctuate like 15 pounds at a time.
Mathis was like 245.
He was listed at in the 230s. I'm just going off a listed weight, so that could even be false too. But
Yeah.
Rumpf is listed at 225. So like even if he puts on 15 pounds coming out of Duke, and this is what Renner mentioned in the draft guide, which is like the dude's awesome. He's got great length, but he needs to put on at least 15
Right.
pounds. Like Von Miller's listed at 250. He feels much bigger and stronger than that to me. But
I mean, Mathis is like the prototype for that
yeah,
small speed pass rusher, right? And
my point with Mingo is he's listed at 235. So I just didn't know. Like I was inexperienced when I fell in love with him back in 2012.
NFL.com lists Mathis at 245.
All right, so we have outdated numbers then. Take Mathis out of it.
Okay.
So Chris Clemens, where's he listed?
Can I also say
the point is the undersized guys struggle. Go read my article and go get the draft guide. That was it.
This is, I think, a big season for Akeem Hicks, with Eddie Goldman opting out for the season. I don't think that's a massive loss because Akeem Hicks can do a lot of the same things, particularly in this sort of hybrid defensive front. But like Akeem Hicks at his very, very best was dominant, right? And he's so good against the run and was good enough to be like a plus power pass rusher, right? And win with a bit of speed sometimes as well. But like his, 2018 was incredible. He had this 90 plus PFF grade. But like that's kind of an outlier for his career. Like he was a sort of high 70s graded guy, jumped to 90 for one incredible all-pro season. And then even last year, injured and stuff, and didn't get a full picture, but was like back down to the sort of 70s baseline, not the 90 guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
So can he get back to that level again? Because I think for the first time in a while, like the Bears actually need him to be at that level for this defensive front to be really imposing.
Yeah. So let's wrap it up on the Bears. You seem optimistic.
I don't know if I'd go as far as saying optimistic, but there's a bunch of teams where it's always hard when you're trying to predict unlikely outcomes, right? We know that just by the law of the NFL, there are going to be some weird worst to first teams every year, right? This year more than ever, I think there's going to be a lot of those. But by definition, trying to pick an unlikely thing to happen is not easy, right? So I can't really see a way that a team like the Dolphins is good this year, right? Even in a crappy division. No, they're not going to be good.
Oh, I can.
There's a bunch of teams out there that I really can't see a scenario by way it works. I can see a way that this Bears team can actually be good and win the NFC North.
My Bears analysis is last year it was a lot easier, right? Last year it was easy for all of us across everywhere at PFF to be like, there's no way they're going to duplicate 2018. Like the 2018 team was an 8-8, 9-7 team that overachieved, made do with subpar quarterback play and had an incredible defense that you just can't duplicate, right? So that was an easy call. They're going to regress. Oh, look at you guys, you're geniuses. This year, I do think because of the volatility in the secondary and at quarterback, it could land all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think because the rest of the division, as you said, may have all gotten worse, the Bears could be 8-8, 9-7 again. And I honestly don't think that their team is as good as they were the last couple of years.
This is definitely a team I think that could shoot for that third wild card spot in the NFC. And just because of what we've seen before, like Nick Foles in the postseason, you get there, Nick Foles can make some things happen.
Never know.
Big
Foles.
Nick energy.
Let's move on. Detroit Lions. This is the team, again, the difference between a bet and a favorite. This is the team that I think our guys are gambling folks.
Yeah.
The forecast guys said this is your best bet in the NFC North. And I think what happens is they picked third last year. So you assume that they were one of the worst teams in the NFL, but they were one of the worst teams because they had to trot Jeff Driscoll out there, David Blau out there. They actually, and then when they had Matthew Stafford, they were losing some heartbreakers early in the year. They were giving the Chiefs a run for their money, and the Packers 2 times that they lost because of illegal hands to the neck. I mean, come on. They should have beaten the Packers twice. So the Lions, I think the people sour on them because they're like, well, they picked third. They didn't win a lot of games. But they're returning a reasonable offensive line, a really good group of playmakers, and a newly aggressive Matthew Stafford that was fantastic last year.
Assuming that holds.
And he's healthy and sticks to attacking down the field. A defense that certainly has plenty of question marks, but I'm looking at that offense and thinking that they have the ability to compete with 3 legitimate receivers, a quarterback, and emerging tight end.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the offense being good. The defense is where my concerns are for this team. But yeah, I mean, I'm on board with the idea that offense could be good. I think I'm a little bit concerned with the idea of relying on Matthew Stafford being the same guy he was before he went down. The performance he had at that average depth of target was insane. It was up there with that 2015 Carson Palmer season in terms of this is ludicrously unsustainable. Now, it's the kind of thing you can somehow sustain for a season, and I've never worked out how that functions. But predicting that to maintain one year to the next is always iffy.
He had 25 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy. He had that one game against the Chiefs. He had 6 big-time throws and 4 turnover-worthy. He had 2 separate games with 6 big-time throws, which is insane. I mean, he was so aggressive throwing the ball down the field, 11.8 average depth of target after years at 6 and 7 and just at, Alex Smithian levels.
Anything over 10 is a lot. Anything over 11 is once in a long time, doesn't show up every now and again, Jameis levels. 11.8, that's the highest we've ever seen, right? We've never seen anything at that.
I don't think so. I'm looking at it unfiltered, I think, with no plays. But the previous year was 8.1. He had a year, 2015, he was at 7. This was his highest passing grade of his career, 83.3.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on his way. And now, they weren't winning games, but
that combination is the highest average depth of target, one of the highest we've ever seen, combined with best passing grade of your career is a combination I don't see sustaining year to year.
Yeah, 8 yards per attempt. It was a career high. Everything was better for Stafford. Again, my concern is the way people evaluate things, because the Lions could easily say, well, we did this with Stafford last year. We didn't win a whole lot of games. And it's
right.
If you do it again this year and he performs at that same level, you're going to be you're the team to beat in the NFC North, if that's the case. Is that crazy?
Yes.
You're the team. If he performs at that level again, I think you're the team to beat. And
no, that's madness.
Here's your question is the secondary for the Lions.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. What makes them better than the Bears?
What?
Are they better than the Bears secondary?
What makes them better?
I'm sorry, what makes them worse than the Bears?
Secondary-wise?
Yeah. Because I'm looking at Desmond Trufant.
Not much, but the Bears' front 7 is better.
Yeah, I like the addition of Jamie Collins, though. Trey Flowers in year 2 there. I think they're getting a little bit better there. I'm looking at the secondary, though, and saying in this man coverage scheme, Desmond Trufant, they paid a lot of money for him, but as a reclamation project, the always solid Deron Harmon, the underrated Tracy Walker, so those 2 safeties, it's going to depend on how good Okudah is right off the bat. And then Justin Coleman's one of the better slot corners.
Okay, well, let me tell you why the Bears is better, right? One, because, they have guys like Eddie Jackson, who's a proven all-pro free safety. Deron Harmon is a solid free safety. He's not Eddie Jackson. Also, I don't like this idea of being the most man-heavy system in the NFL. Bill Belichick has worked out how that functions and has got it down to a T. I don't see evidence that the Lions have yet. They don't do the same things that the Patriots do in terms of actually maximizing that man coverage down to down. All they did was hang out Darius Slay on an island, let him get burned and
with
roasted.
With 1 million 3-man
right?
rushes.
Now you don't have Darius Slay anymore, who was a proven Pro Bowl caliber corner. You're expecting a first-round rookie to come in, do the same thing, if not upgrade. You bring in Desmond Trufant as a complete reclamation project, hoping that he can hold up in that scenario. And Justin Coleman is one of the best slot corners in the NFL, who's been getting roasted in this man cover system.
Well, yeah, because it's not easy.
Right. So you're this is... We talk about guys being put in a good position to succeed. This, if anything, is doing the opposite.
Here's what I would say. The same point that you make about Sean McVay needing to figure out what 2.0 is, that's Patricia in this defense, right? They came in a couple years ago, and they were as vanilla as it gets, especially for a Belichick defense. Just on like the macro level things, like are you running stunts? No. Are you running 4-man rushes? It's 3 and 4-man rushes, not a whole lot of blitzing, not a whole lot of different coverage shells. It's a whole lot of just cover one. Is there a 2.0 to Patricia in the Belichick scheme, which is normally game plan specific and will change every week, and who knows what we're going to do?
So where I think it's slightly different, I think McVay had the thing that worked and then needed to work out version 2.0 of that system. Patricia's thing is, it's like he's taken the thing from somewhere else and now needs to make sure that he actually has all of it, right? It's like, moving. It's like if you change computers, right? You need to make sure all the settings from the old one come along with you.
Yeah.
Like what we've got here is he's jumped from like one computer to the next, hasn't taken the sort of the automatic swap over system with him, and has just tried to like remember what all the settings are as he goes, right? That's what he's done. Whereas what he needed was that seamless transition thing where you hook them up together and it like copies settings from one to the other.
Oh, when you get the new computer and like when Chrome remembers your bookmarks.
That's what I'm saying.
And all,
so
that's the best.
He didn't do that. He's just trying to remember what all his bookmarks are.
Well,
and you're always going to forget some.
You know who's going to help with the bookmarks?
Who?
Jamie Collins, Danny Shelton, Daron Harmon, all of the Patriots players who come in.
That'll help, yeah.
I think that helps. I love the Julian Okwara draft pick up front. I mean, I just think they're moving in the right direction. And if you are talking best bets and teams that the public is probably sleeping on, you could make the argument that you have a competent quarterback, the playmakers, as we mentioned, they're pretty solid 3 deep. Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and Danny Amendola. Like that's beautiful. Plus Hawkinson, who showed flashes last year at tight end. Like if you're talking 1 to 4 playmakers, like the Lions are in the top 10 in the NFL as far as unique skill sets and all that stuff. I think they're a good bet. I agree with all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate them as a bet. I don't know that it's predicting long shots, right? It's always tricky. I don't love this particular long shot. I think too much of that is based on the idea of what Stafford was doing last year, which I think is at its core not sustainable one year to the next.
So even if he doesn't play as well, the style of big-armed guy who's going to take chances downfield and try to create chunk plays, like again, I would much rather that. This is the plea we've been making.
Right.
Table banging. The plea we've been making to Derek Carr, at least try it because there are chunk plays to be had. I think they'll stay aggressive, work off play action, and try to drive the ball down the field again. Even if he doesn't play as well, there's still going to be a lot more plays to be made than maybe the previous years when he was more conservative. Sure,
and I know you like that stylistically, but the other end of the scale on that is Jameis Winston. It's like, if it's like just being aggressive for aggressiveness' sake is not always great. If you don't actually harness that aggressiveness and minimize a certain degree of errors, you're going to end up with Jameis. And at the end of everything, they just got fed up with that and said, look, get out of here. It's not good enough, right? So, look, Stafford is almost always better than Jameis, but the high end of where he was unsustainable. So where in that spectrum is he going to fall? Because somewhere there's a line where it stops being like a positive thing.
On the negative side, I think offensive line-wise, Rick Wagner's out at right tackle. They're bringing in Big V, coming in from the Eagles. He's coming off of his best run-blocking season. He's always been a question in pass protection. Right now, Oday Abushi is the guy that's perhaps the starting right guard.
Can you say Big V's first name yet?
Halapuliavata. No, I haven't even tried. I can't do it like on the spot and spell it out. I have to. Like that's not good radio.
Well, I mean,
I've never really tried.
Okay.
Have you tried? Just call him Vitae.
Well, yeah, everyone calls him the Big V, so they don't have to. It's what, Halipulivati? Vitae?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Good job.
I think that was fine radio, to be honest.
Oh, okay. Good work. Anyway, the line's probably average at best, unless that third round guard Jonah Jackson could see some time. We really liked him coming out. DeAndre Swift was their second round running back. I think, again, when you have those first 4 pieces, the 3 wide receivers and the tight end,
what do you think,
Swift is the 5th, that's not bad.
What do you think this backfield ends up looking like? Like, is he going to go, is Patricia going to go the Belichick route of like different back for different day?
Honestly, I think Kerryon Johnson plays the Sony Michel role. Like if you've got a fullback, if Nick Bowden's in there,
because this is
early
very
downs, you're going Kerryon Johnson.
In terms of like running back stable, this is a very diverse group of skill sets, right? Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Bo Scarborough, like those are three very different backs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Kerryon Johnson's probably the best, just pure running back, the guy that he can run power, inside zone. He's going to run between the tackles. He'll run with a fullback. If they do, part of Stafford's aggressiveness was the ability, again, like what they were doing with Russell Wilson in Seattle. It's, they built a run-first team. They built a team that really wanted to establish the run. We criticized them for it a little bit, but what that does is that is at least the philosophy that, like, when my quarterback's going to throw, it's going to be down the field. I mean, I think that's really what it is. It's like we're going to create chunk plays and maybe not run as much quick game. We're not going to replace the run with the pass. We're going to run, right? And I think what that did is allowed Stafford to focus on fewer passes, but creating chunk plays. Kerryon Johnson's the guy to kind of make that run. And then when you want to spread it out, go 11 personnel, 3 wide, and all that stuff, DeAndre Swift. That 11 personnel package, though, of Golladay, Marvin Jones, Danny Amendola, and TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift, that is tough to cover because it's 5 legitimate receivers. So I'm interested in seeing that if they go empty and if they start, moving guys around there. It'll come down to their defense, though, right? Like, they have to take a step forward in year 3 under Patricia. Jamie Collins has never played well outside of Belichick, but he's at least he's in the tree. He's in the trust tree here at linebacker. Jared Davis has never played well. They denied his 5th-year option. He's coming off a year grading in the 40s, regressing a little bit, but he's a good blitzer. Yeah. Like that, having Collins there maybe allows him to be deployed in those very specific roles.
That's got to be a bummer to the guys that are like best young linebacker in the NFL, and then his own team doesn't pick up his 5th-year option.
Some people.
I'm not saying it's proof either way. I'm just saying that, like, if you're on the banging the table for Jared Davis bandwagon, and then his own team doesn't pick up the option, that's got to be tough. Like, that's a blow to the credibility right there.
I also, you're right. I also look at the secondary. They brought in Jaron Kearse, Darrell Roberts, Amani Oruwariye still there? There's another name.
Yeah.
I had it.
I struggle with that
Oruwariye.
Yeah.
I've had that one, though.
I know, yeah.
Haven't said it in
the
a
first
while.
time you fucked it up.
I kind of like the secondary. Like, even if Desmond Trufant isn't the right, Oruwariye is good insurance. Jaron Kearse is a good.
I think he might be a better starter.
Tight end coverer. Yeah, I think they're more equipped.
I don't hate the group.
Depth-wise.
My concern with that is, you now have so much expectation on their first-round rookie to actually play well right out of the gate, which is just hard, right? It's tough. It's a tough ask. It's rarely successful, particularly at cornerback. And 2, I honestly don't like that system unless you're Belichick, unless you know all the settings. Going psychotically man-heavy on the back end is not good in today's NFL. We've seen that from basically anybody else that does it, except Belichick, because he knows the things to do. And even he doesn't do, we think of man all the time the way the Jets used to run it with Darrelle Revis, right? Just hang a guy out in an aisle and that's all you do. But even, like, Belichick doesn't do that. They don't hang Gilmore out against, like, Julio Jones every single play on his own with nobody anywhere near him. That's not what they do. They, like, specifically engineer it so that he's matched up with the guy he's most likely to be able to shut down every single snap.
I just wonder if having Deron Harmon back there and all that stuff does
it's possible.
Create more of that flexibility, right? Because, again, the Patriots scheme is like, all right, Devin McCourty, they need smart safeties because one week you're like the over-the-top guy on Julio. Like, you're literally just doubling him, or you're leaning away from one guy and covering the other 3. Or, like, there's some specific things that they ask their safeties to do. And Tracy Walker's another, he's been a really solid playmaker. That's been an underrated 3rd rounder for them the last couple of years. I like the Lions, as a sleeper team this year, in part because I do think, more people are down on them. And I think more importantly, I'm banking on Stafford, just, doing the same thing again.
Yeah, I don't love them for basically the same reasons. I just don't think that defense is going to be great, and I don't think what Stafford did last year is what we're going to see this year.
You don't?
No.
You have no faith in Patricia here? Adjusting?
He can adjust. This Belichick coaching tree thing, unless you have the full thing, it's just not the same.
Like Tom Brady?
Right. And I've yet to see anybody demonstrate that they have the full system.
That's the bigger thing. You got Tom Brady.
Well, that helps.
Resolves.
But even
a
on
lot
a,
of
just
things.
on a defensive
No, defensively
basis.
too. I mean, obviously, there's differences that other teams haven't been able to employ. Quick break to tell you about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. I actually love this because it's best ball, and it's your new favorite place to play fantasy football for real money. It's all called Underdog Fantasy. With Underdog, all you need to do is the fun part, which is draft.
Excellent.
And I know you're lazy, and you probably just want to draft and not keep up with your team, Sam. So that's perfect. You forget about injuries, trades, waivers, setting lineups. Just set it and forget it.
Yes.
Like the chicken roaster a few years ago, you go set it and forget. They probably didn't have those ads over in Ireland. Set it and forget it and wait for the winnings to come in. And this year they have a $1 million tournament. That's right. Just draft the best team, and you have a shot at $1 million in prizes. Sign up for Underdog today and enter the Best Ball Mania for a chance to win the $1 million in prizes by going to underdogfantasy.com or search Underdog Fantasy in your app store. That's underdogfantasy.com or search Underdog Fantasy in the App Store. And then be sure to enter the promo code PFF after you make your first deposit. So that's my favorite part. You don't worry about lineups. You got a chance for $1 million. They have all the information you need, player news, rankings, ownership, all that stuff, all within the app. And you can forget about those pros actually at PFF, a lot of our smart guys who use these advanced algorithms, and they flood contests that you don't have a chance at if you're just a normal guy without an algorithm. You don't have to worry about any of that. So I love it. It's Underdog Fantasy. Check it out, underdogfantasy.com or Underdog Fantasy in your app store. Promo code is PFF.
Big fan of chance at $1 million. That's always good.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And we got some former PFFers who have won
Millions?
multi-millions. Yeah, I think twice.
Damn.
That one guy.
Why haven't we won millions?
I don't think you have the advanced algorithm, or maybe you didn't have Underdog Fantasy to go check it out.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Two more teams.
We
Green
got
Bay
another
Packers
Got another ad read, don't we?
are next. We have a pre-roll.
Pre-roll.
We have to do right now.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Can we? Come on. Very.
What? You criticizing my professionalism again?
You could. Yes, because you could have sent me a message like you did the first time.
I could have, but I didn't.
Send me a message.
Green Bay Packers then?
Yes. Let's go to the Packers.
Okay.
All right. Let's not rehash the whole Aaron Rodgers and his feelings thing. Did you see his interview with Kyle Brandt?
I saw bits of it.
Some of the bits, at least.
Yeah.
I thought the bits were fascinating because you don't get an athlete that's like honest about a lot of that stuff. Aaron Rodgers was like really honest.
He always has been. I mean,
Yeah.
so he takes a lot of crap because of the honesty, right? It's this sort of catch-22 of everyone wants their athletes to be honest and not just feed the same PR polished lines, and then when they do, they get criticized for it.
Right. So I would like if you asked Brady, Breeze, Peyton, so just say those three guys. You asked them about a draft when a new quarterback got drafted in the first round when you have bad receivers.
Yeah.
They'd all be like, we're going to play with the guys that are here.
Right.
And, it's just like down the line, bullet pointed.
Manning's, Manning, as with everything, is the absolute master at that, right? The dude never said anything outside of the official party line in like 15 years of his career.
Yeah, so they would all give the same answers, right? And Rodgers is like, I don't know, I scouted the receivers. I really liked Justin Jefferson, who, by the way, went to Minnesota. Yeah. I thought that Ayuk was going to be the guy.
Right.
And we loved him, and then he goes to San Francisco. Then they draft a quarterback, my agent tells me. I made a stiff drink.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going to move on. And like, you know what? As I look at my future, like, I'll be here in Green Bay for at least another year, but it's probably not going to end great. I mean, he was just like really honest about everything. Yeah. And honestly, his analysis didn't sound that much different than like what we would say on the podcast. Like, there was a couple receivers available. They forgot about them. They went with the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers isn't long for this world as a Green Bay Packer. Yeah. Like, I was impressed with at least, his awareness, or like a difference between awareness and like saying it.
Yeah.
But he was honest about it. So all that said, we don't like the direction the Packers have gone. We certainly would have gone playmaker first versus, monster running back in the second round and developmental quarterback in the first round. We probably wouldn't build a team that's really trying to duplicate what the Niners are doing, probably without the right personnel to do it. And all that said, you're still kind of a believer in the Packers, aren't you?
Insofar as I think they'll win the division, yes.
Okay.
Believer is a term that maybe gets us into some trouble. But like, I don't think they're that good, right? Like, I think they'll win this division almost by default because I don't think the division is very good. I don't think they were as good last year as their record suggested they were.
That was the other point that Aaron was making. He's like, man, like we're one game away from the Super Bowl. We were 13-3. You think, oh, we're a piece or two. That was the one place where maybe you have to say that stuff, but like the reality is they probably weren't. Well,
not just you have to say it, but he has to think it as well, right?
Sure.
Like that's part of what makes you a great football player is believing, hey, we're a game away. So we add to this team. I think fundamentally they weren't. If they disagreed with that and they had the self-realization to understand that they were not a game away last season, then kudos to the Packers, right? Because that's what we would point out. And I think ultimately that's what we saw when they ran into the NFC Championship game, right? When you actually went up against the top tier of the NFL in that game, albeit a team that came out in the losing end of the Super Bowl, you got annihilated. Like, this was not a team that was capable of going toe-to-toe with the best teams in the NFL. Neither was the Vikings, and we saw that the week before. Like, when they ran up against the team that was the best in the NFL, or as good as the best in the NFL, they got the crap kicked out of them. So I don't think Green Bay was as good last year as their record. So I would expect them, even if you just ran it back, to be worse this year than a season ago. But as I say, you can make the case that the whole division got worse. So I think they still end up winning it almost by default because they're probably still better than the other three.
And Aaron Rodgers is still pretty good.
Yeah.
He has regressed. The offenses around him have regressed strongly. And I think that's where, our little analytics community is like really down on Rodgers. And like legitimately there are numbers that say he's middle of the pack. Like he's QB 15 from here's how productive your offense is. For us, he always ranks higher because I think his actual play has been better than probably the output. And that's where it comes down to the playmakers. And I think that's why we went into the draft saying I thought Justin Jefferson would have been the perfect fit there, if for nothing else, because he's so good at getting open over the middle, and that's where Aaron needs to attack more. But regardless, even if you're trying to duplicate what the Niners do, which is run, pass, run, play action, end around, all that stuff, you probably need more than Devontae Adams even to make that successful. And they have a whole bunch of 6'4", 6'5" dudes who just aren't dynamic enough, I think, in today's NFL. That's my concern here.
Very quickly, Rodgers last season, overall PFF grade. Remember, this is play-by-play grading of what he did on the play, not necessarily the results, not all those kinds of things. Essentially distilling the quarterback down as much as you can to what he was doing. Rodgers was the number 9 quarterback overall in the NFL. The last 8 games of the season, plus the playoffs, that slipped down to number 12. And
that includes one really
good game in the postseason.
Take out that divisional game.
I mean, if you take out the playoffs period and just look at the last 8 games of the regular season, he's down all the way at 17. So
just using that as a proxy, again, this is where it's like the narrative thing, right? New coach, completely new play caller and coach for the first time ever for Rodgers, and you're like, well, it's going to be a slow start, and then it'll get better. It got worse as the season went on. He got worse as the season progressed.
Yes. What do you think they're doing, the Packers, right? What do you think that this entire approach, forget the Jordan Love pick for a moment, right? I think you can almost put that on its own island out here, that that's a sort of independent decision that, hey, we like this quarterback and we're going to prepare for the future whenever that comes, right? In addition to that, like everything they did from that point on, I think speaks to a certain direction that they're moving offensively. And I've heard multiple different sort of opinions about what that is. What's your take? What do you think they're doing?
I think it's lessening the pressure on the quarterback. I think it's LaFleur who has McVay ties and Shanahan ties, and they're all tied together, right? And they all run a system, and they run a system that's QB independent. And there's a history in the system of success with numerous quarterbacks. Matt Schaub, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo. Granted, the 1 year that we always put these tiered quarterbacks, right? The 1 year or 2 years Kyle Shanahan had a tier 2 or better quarterback, and that's Matt Ryan. Mm-hmm. And one of those years was a tough transition, and the second year was MVP Matt Ryan, who almost broke the league statistically. So there's a history of quote-unquote tier 3 quarterbacks who become products of the system. And I think for LaFleur and for the Packers, it's this buy-in to like, we got to trust our system. We're not building around Rodgers. We're going to build a system through which he can flourish. So I don't know that they're necessarily wrong there. And if I can get some things to load here, I would pull up some numbers. I think everything's broken right now.
I'll buy you a couple of seconds by giving you a little training camp nugget.
I don't need any seconds. I think.
Oh, okay.
Is Ultimate not loading right now? What's happening here? Rick?
See if I care.
Texting Rick.
See if I care.
No, buy me some seconds.
Jarrett Stidham has thrown a 7th interception in the last 72 hours in training camp.
Oh, man.
I mean, it's training camp, right? So it doesn't actually mean anything.
No, there we go. Last year, that was Garoppolo.
Right. But remember there was a period where people were losing their minds because Patrick Mahomes couldn't stop throwing interceptions in training camp.
Oh, yeah.
It's like Patrick Mahomes took like a week to learn Andy Reid's system. And in that week, he threw like 800 interceptions. And then from that week onwards, he's been like the greatest quarterback the league's ever seen.
Yeah, I think Rodgers threw a bunch a few years ago too, and like they were making that. I think he was making this point. He's like, sometimes we're just trying stuff.
Right.
And you're like, hey, there's triple coverage. I wonder if I can squeeze it in there.
Yeah.
Like, just you're doing different things. Here's what I think partially they're trying to do. I look at Rodgers over the last couple of years. He's okay throwing, short game type of stuff and everything. I think they're trying to take that away. Right. They're just trying to take the ball out of his hands more, which will, again, the same thing as Stafford, the same thing as Russell Wilson. If this leads to more intermediate level throws and deeper throws, which Rodgers is more than capable of making, he might actually produce more, but on like 100 fewer attempts. I think that's what they're trying to draw up.
Yeah, it's the difference in emphasis, right? There's a lot of people that are like, well, they don't believe in Aaron Rodgers anymore. They're trying to take the ball out of his hands. They're trying to go to this run-heavy offense where Rodgers has less of an impact, right? And I think, and then the other way of emphasizing that is, I think they are of the opinion, and I'm with you on this, is that in this system, like this is an inherently quarterback-friendly system, right? It makes average quarterbacks look good. Mm-hmm. So what does it do to a good quarterback? Like in theory,
it should make him great.
In theory, it should take a good quarterback, a Matt Ryan, and make him into an MVP, right? So whilst you are taking volume out of Aaron Rodgers' hands, you're asking him to do things less often. It maximizes the impact of what you're asking him to do. So we're going to give him the ball less, but with a view that when he actually has the ball, he's now throwing a schemed up 30-yard bomb over the middle over play action that wasn't there beforehand, right? So I do think that they are of the opinion that if we get this offense cooking the way the 49ers were, Rodgers looks like an all-pro again, right? Not the guy that's like 10 to 15 in the PFF grades. He goes back to being vintage Aaron Rodgers or somewhere near that.
Yeah, and I guess, we would again, in that system, and I've talked to people in the system and all that stuff, like there's this belief that the run game is tied to play action and all that stuff, and in theory, there is, as far as like you make everything looks the same. There's a lot of outside zone and bootleg off of that and play action, deep crossers and all that fun stuff, right? At the same time, we also wouldn't say like, man, you really got to make sure like you get Aaron Jones his 20 carries and then A.J. Dillon's going to get his 10. Like I still wouldn't take the ball out of Rodgers' hands, even though it hasn't looked as pretty the last couple of years as it had. In 2014 and 2016 and other points in his career. I think the other point is the mistake teams make, the last thing that they saw.
Yeah.
That's my bigger issue with this stuff. Like everything we said philosophically is okay. Rodgers getting older, we're going to take a little off his plate, fine. But if it's fueled by the last thing you saw, and the last thing you saw was the best team in the NFC last year.
Yeah.
Throwing the ball 8 times in a game and running the ball down your throat.
Yes.
That's the last thing you saw. So the last thing you saw was I had bad run defense. They ran all over me, and they didn't even need a quarterback.
Right.
And I need to emulate that. That would be the mistake.
I think there's a huge portion of this that's fueled by almost exactly that, right? They looked across to the other sideline in the NFC Championship game and thought, like, this is what this offense is supposed to look like, right? What is currently being done to us is what our offense should look like. So how do we create that? And they've gone like, right, let's draft a monstrous running back. Let's draft a weird H-back hybrid to take the Kyle Juszczyk role. Like, let's try and craft that in one off season. And sure, I mean, that is, like, it can look like that. But equally, there were games, the San Francisco New Orleans game where Jimmy Garoppolo had to air it out and they had to come from behind and had to make big plays through the air. Like, that offense was just damn good. Like, they beat the crap out of you on the ground and, stomped all over you because your run defense was garbage that game. But that's like, that specific way is not how that offense won every single week. So if you're trying to replicate that, it's questionable. Plus, there's a difference between having Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback and having Aaron Rodgers. Like, it's the Russell Wilson argument again, right? It's how much does taking the ball out of his hands help him be efficient versus how much should you just be letting Russ cook? And I think the same argument is there with Aaron Rodgers. Like, we've seen him be amazing when he's been the guy. So how much should you be actively trying to take the ball out of his hands?
It's just the perception of what happens on plays is just so different, right? So I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers the last 2 years on all throws up to 9 yards, just as a proxy. Like, let's say they're going to take away some of the short pass game and replace it with runs. Aaron Rodgers has averaged 6.3 yards per attempt, which is middle of the pack here. 6.3 yards per attempt on those passes up to 9 yards. So if you're like, man, we're going to take the ball out we'll let him attack down the field and it'll be off play action, he'll have more opportunities, but we're going to take away the short stuff and replace it with runs. Like, the average run is 4 yards, 4.1 or whatever. The average pass attempt is 6.3. And then, of course, you have sacks in there too, but there's not a ton of sacks when you're working quick game. So even just like the premise of like, we'll take some off his plate and we're going to run the ball more, like, you're going to be less efficient offensively on those plays, on the short stuff. And what I'm saying is the difference is, like, Aaron Rodgers throwing an incompletion feels like this massive failure, where like a 2-yard run is like, all right, it's not a win, but like, we're at least moving forward. When the reality of like 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 10 is almost negligible. Like, that's not that big of a difference. And I think that's where the offense, the system and stuff as a whole is coming from.
Yeah, the Rodgers thing is a real tricky conundrum. I don't know what the answer is, right? We've had multiple years now of he's not the guy that he was in 2011, 2010, 2014, and he's probably never going to be that guy again, right? The question is, though, what the hell is he, and what are the problems, and can we get it better?
Here's what I think it is, right? If you go to the 4 elite quarterbacks over the last decade plus, right, which is Brady, Rodgers, Breeze, and Peyton Manning, they were all at points where it's like, throw to Sam Monson, who cares? They're awesome. They're going to be fine, right? And they've all had points in their career. Plus playmaker. They carried whoever's out there. Mm-hmm. Brady's no longer that guy, probably. So now he's surrounded by all the supporting cast in Tampa Bay, but he has a chance to produce. Like, Breeze probably still needs some help here. Peyton's can't even throw the ball anymore, so he's out of the equation. Like, if you were telling me, give me the blueprint for the twilight of Aaron Rodgers' career, I would say we're still going to throw the ball a lot, but dude needs to have trust in these guys. Like, he trusts Davante Adams implicitly because Davante Adams is awesome. Like, if you gave him the Lions receiving core, I think Rodgers is an MVP candidate again, statistically. Like, if he was thrown to that group, he's an MVP candidate.
But you know what I think?
He's capable.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with that. But what I think is going on is that I think as you age, you transform into a sort of more intense, distilled version of what you are, right? So think of dry aging a steak, right? Mm-hmm. Fundamentally, it's the same thing, but the more it ages, the more it intensifies, and it becomes more and more steaky, more beef flavor. It just becomes a more potent version of what the thing was, right? And I think the same thing is true with quarterbacks, except it's the positives and the negatives, right? So he just becomes a more intense, more distilled caricature of the type of player he always was. So he's still like, if you look at his big time throws, he's still like second in the NFL in big time throws over the last couple of seasons.
The highlight reel's
right?
still there, yeah.
But the things that were always a sort of quirk and arguably a flaw to his game, right? He takes more sacks rather than interceptions. Those have become bigger parts of his game as well, right? So this idea of he was always a little bit risk averse in terms of, really being aggressive with the football and putting it into tight windows and throwing it into dangerous areas of the field, right? He was always a little bit on the conservative end of that spectrum, and particularly when, pressure got to him and those kinds of things. And that he's kind of leaned into that as he's gotten older, right? And those have become bigger flaws, if you like, or become a bigger part of his game. So you still got like the top end stuff is still incredible, but the things that were like negative quirks to his game have become bigger and bigger. And for a while it was like, well, is it the scheme? Is it guys not being open? Is it him not trusting them? And ultimately I think it was like each one of those things maybe pushed him a little bit further down that role. But realistically, it's just, this is a guy just getting set in his ways as he got older. And I think it's really hard to pull somebody out of that. Like, this is who he is now, right? So now what you're left with is, okay, if that is a given, if this is what Rodgers is, how do you best maximize what that is?
What if you make really good analogies? I like the steak thing, and really well done.
There's a but on the horizon here. I can sense it.
What if it was the simplest answer?
Which is?
Just his supporting cast and the receivers. And again, I let me compare him to Brady again. Because Brady's had a lot of receivers that he hasn't meshed with through the years.
Yes.
Rodgers, you can tell, like, he wants to give Allen Lazard a hug every time he throws the ball to him. He loves Allen Lazard. Brady has played favorites through the years. Like, these guys have played favorites. I'm placating to my quarterback in this. I'm saying, who do you want, Aaron? You liked Justin Jefferson? Like, we'll trade up to get. I'm not going to trade up, but I'm going to get the guys you want. Because the last time here's the last two times he was really good. 2014, MVP. He had Randall Cobb with over 100 catches, and he had Jordy Nelson, who's awesome, right? The first time we saw Rodgers regress was 2015. And when I go to Premium Stats 2.0 and I click on 2015 and I look at Jordy Nelson, he's just not there. Remember, he was hurt in 2015. And that was the first time when we were analyzing Rodgers, we were like, something's off.
Right.
And there's like a clear open slant and he's not taking it. Like, he doesn't have the trust. He still had Randall Cobb, but his number 2 receiver from a reception standpoint is Richard Rodgers. He had James Jones there. He had Devontae Adams there over the last, those couple of years, and who's starting to get better and better. So then 16 was when he was like, forget you guys at PFF, I'm going to go on a run. Remember, he called us out. Yeah. He had Jordy that year. It was it wasn't the same Jordy, but it was still like 15 touchdowns Jordy and over 1,300 yards, including the postseason's Jordy, and an emerging Devontae Adams, and Randall Cobb was still there. So the last time Aaron Rodgers was good, he had 3 legitimate receivers in 2014 and 2016.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, like, let's see what happened in 2017 before he got hurt. He had Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, and like a shell of Jordy Nelson. Like, basically just bring Jordy Nelson back.
I mean, I do agree that if it was me and I was like trying to come up with a solution, I would have taken a shot at giving him one more elite receiver and seeing what that did. Like, I think that is the most obvious way of moving the needle.
But let me just finish this real quick. Again, our like little analytics world, which I think has, I trust PFF grade so much because I think we can separate the quarterback from their playmakers. So while the PFF grade has gone down, it hasn't gone down nearly as much as, say, EPA, which is that advanced stat that we've decided to attach to players when it's very much, I think, a team-driven stat because it involves yak and it involves contested catches. It involves players making plays. And if the criticism with Rodgers is he's taken more sacks, well, it all is dependent on each other. If a guy's not open or he doesn't trust a guy to be open or he's not going to take chances because he doesn't trust a guy, he's going to take more sacks. Like, it's all dependent on Rodgers having 3 dudes that he could throw to instead of 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if I was facing this offseason with all the things we've said and taken as read, look, Rodgers is not the guy, this is what he is, what's the best way of getting the most out of that? I would say, he has immense faith in Devontae Adams. He seems to have quite a lot of faith in Allen Lazard, but Lazard is a capped receiver in terms of how good he can be, just in terms of physical gifts and all those kinds of things. So let's get him one more guy that he's got real faith in. That probably moves the needle more than anything I can do from a schematic point of view or from the run game standpoint or from the defense. Like, that's the thing. So I'm with you. I would have taken a receiver in the first round too, but they didn't. They went in a different direction. I do like the Lazard thing is interesting, though, because I think trust is a big part of this, right? Rodgers had an innate trust in Jordy Nelson. He's developed innate trust in Devontae Adams and nobody else, right? But last year, we started to see that, like, there's some trust there with Lazard. And the numbers weren't always amazing, but sometimes when you look at the throws, he put, like, with Devontae Adams, he's prepared to look up, see it's him, and just fire it, right? Yeah. Nobody else is he prepared to do that with. Even with guys like, Valdez-Scantling is good for a few big plays a game, but it's ones where he's like 5 yards open and Rodgers like, all right, fine.
Yeah.
He heaves in the ball, right? But there are plays where, coming to a second read, he looks, sees Allen Lazard one-on-one and just gives him the chance, right?
Yep.
And Lazard's been pretty good at like rewarding him for giving him that shot. So I think Lazard has a chance to legitimately sort of elevate himself and become a viable real number 2 in that offense. I think they could still use another guy, but I think he has a chance to take a step forward and be a useful contributor beyond what we saw last year.
And again, if I'm the head coach of the Packers and I'm like, okay, over the next 2 or 3 years, what's my best chance of success? I don't think it's like getting Aaron Jones more carries, as great as he is, or like A.J. Dillon emerging and looking like this next big freak. It's like happy, productive Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
So I would do what I could.
Or
there. All that said,
pissed off Aaron Rodgers.
Or pissed off Aaron Rodgers. If all of this again, we go back and listen to our post-draft analysis, which was like, oh, they just wanted to piss off Aaron because that's what he does. Anyway, Packers offensively, I think is top to bottom one of the least talented teams. Well, let me rephrase that. Below average group of playmakers. I still think they have a good offensive line because when you go top to bottom, it's like good, question mark, good, right? I mean, that's pretty much it. Ellington Jenkins at left guard, good as a rookie. Corey Linsley at center. Billy Turner's a question at right guard. And the 2 tackles, you have Bakhtiari's the best left tackle in football, pass protection-wise. Rick Wagner, coming off a subpar year, but he's been a pretty average performer throughout most of his career. So they should be fine offensive line-wise. Aaron Jones has been fantastic running the ball. That's the other thing, too. The Packers with Rodgers at quarterback the last couple of years have been really productive, like on a per-play basis, really good running the football.
Jones is really good.
Yeah, but I think that also goes to this point, like if you have a pass game to worry about, the run game will be good. So also part of my concern is that they want to push things more that way and push the envelope run game-wise to set up the pass when like the run game's been being set up by the pass really well.
Tyler Ervin apparently moving out of the backfield to wide receiver, but that's sparked the crackdown on training camp reports. People can't report that.
Oh, the Green Bay media is hilarious right now. There's like Devontae Adams has left the field. There's a human being in his place.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Or offensive lineman is down. It's a big guy. That's all I could tell you.
Looks like he's 300 plus.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll be interested to see how that plays out. And it could work. I don't know. But, there's a lot of things at play here. Defensively, I think they've built the pieces in the secondary to be really good. They've been all over the place, though. We've talked about Jair being a guy that, looks like a great cornerback one week and is, giving up 200. Give up 300 yards across 2 different games last year. Other than that was lockdown. Darnell Savage, nice little coverage addition last year, who just flies around the field. Adrian Amos, Kevin King. They're still waiting on a cornerback, too. Josh Jackson's making some plays.
Oh, yeah?
At training camp.
It's not too late?
It's not too late for 2018 second rounder Josh Jackson, who we liked coming out.
This is a defense that it feels like there's a huge range of outcomes. Like the Jair Alexander needs to show that he can be that elite guy consistently, not just a lot of the time. Zadarius Smith needs to show that he can be the guy he was last year again. Led the NFL in total pressures last season, 93. It's a huge number, but hadn't really ever threatened to do that before. Like that was a fair departure from what we'd seen from him. He was good, not great previously. Can he back that up? Kenny Clark, I think, is the one guy that he's the most sure thing on that defense, I think, in terms of just being like that guy has become the 2020 prototype for what a nose tackle is, right? Nose tackles used to be 400 pounds of fat in Ted Washington.
He is the prototype. He is the new,
But those guys don't exist anymore. You can't have that guy because he plays like 150 snaps on obvious rundowns.
Can I say, I miss those guys.
You miss them?
I miss them.
There was something funny about them, right?
No, I thought it was awesome.
No, like late era Ted Washington when he was legitimately 400 plus.
But he can still move pretty well.
Like, you are wider than the 2 offensive linemen assigned to double team you.
No, I mean, I miss it because I was a young fan and all that stuff. I miss watching a game and you'd be like, every week the announcers would be like, you know what the key to this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is? It's Casey Hampton in the middle. Or you know what the key to this Patriots defense is? It's their free agent signing Ted Washington because he takes on 3 blockers up front and he allows the linebackers to work. And
I kind of enjoyed them the most, though, like when they aged into the caricature at the end of the career, right? So Ted Washington, when he became like 400 plus, the last couple of years of Grady Jackson, when it was a year where he played for the Lions and he couldn't move anymore. Like he couldn't so what would happen is he was in there for rundowns and he would just the ball snapped, he would just stand up and then lean on an offensive lineman, right? And you couldn't move him because the dude was like 400 plus pounds. So, but equally, if the ball went anywhere other than like right where he was standing, he was a non-factor. Those guys were just funny to me.
Yeah, they are.
I do kind of miss them. But anyway, Kenny Clark has become like what the nose tackle looks like in today's NFL, right? Which is if you're going to be on the field, you need to rush the passer to some extent. And he's really good against the run, and he's developed into a pretty good pass rusher who can win with quickness from that nose tackle alignment or kick it outside a little bit, not like all the way to the edge or maybe not even a 3-tech, but from sort of pass rushing interior alignments. He's really good. And then it's a case of what you get out of the rest, right? What does Christian Kirksey bring to the table? Can Darnell Savage become the first-round guy that he was supposed to be? Can one of those guys, Kevin King, Josh Jackson, become the legit second corner that actually needs to play well now that you don't have a 128-year-old Tremont Williams anymore? And then the final one is, what do you get out of Rashawn Gary? Can he become a first rounder, or was that just folly the whole way?
You're right. There's a wide range of outcomes, and I also think that last year kind of epitomized this whole theory that your defense is dependent on offense. After week 1, remember they gave up 3 points to the Bears, and Rodgers' famous post-game interview was, "What's the difference? We have a defense now." And it looked like the defense was so much better, and we were like, well, maybe it's just Mitchell not being as good. Maybe your defensive performance is just so dependent on what the offense does. And if you just look at the games last year, they gave up 34 when they ran into the Eagles. They gave up 24 when they ran into the Cowboys. That's fine. It wasn't too bad. Gave up 24 against Matt Moore's Chiefs, right? When you went up against a good offense. You gave up 26 against the Chargers. You give up 37 twice to the Niners, right? So, it was like when you went up against some pretty good offenses, you struggled, but you had good games against the Giants in the snow and Washington's football team and then the Bears again. And
well done.
They did well again. Yeah, thank you. They did well at Minnesota. They did, that's, Kirk down the stretch in an important game. So that's the thing, right? Is you can't go into the season we'll just win with defense because you can't bank on that. All that said, Mike Pettin, I think, has had way more good than bad defensively. So
yeah,
they'll be all right. Packers are going to win the division?
I think so.
If I was choosing the winner, I think I would still lean them. Didn't like their offseason. All of the negativity.
Criticize me from all the way along, and then you're like, yeah, okay, they're going to win.
Yeah, Rodgers is the best quarterback in the division still.
Is he?
I think so.
Is he?
Oh, now you're going to. Is it Stafford? Is it Cousins?
Stafford.
Minnesota Vikings time. Is Kirk Cousins the best quarterback in the NFC North?
I think at this point it would be difficult to find that many data points that say Cousins isn't the best quarterback in the NFC North right now.
Interesting.
Seriously, how many can you think of where he's not the clear number one guy right now?
The one we pulled out, was it just put the ball in his hands? Well, he was actually decent at that, wasn't he?
That's what I'm saying. Now, Rodgers has more big-time throws. I'll give him that. Cousins has the better grade, has...
Over what period of time?
Anything relatively recent.
Not over the last 2 years, I don't think.
Better grade?
Last year, yeah. I don't think over... you got to stack it up here. Hold on.
I'm pretty sure he does.
Everybody hold.
If it helps, we can probably throw something up on the back there.
Go black screens again.
Or just pull the power out again.
Passing grade last 2 years. No, Rodgers 87.2 and Cousins 86.
87 versus 86.
Yeah, that's close. Cousins was better last year.
Yeah.
I also think Cousins has been he's been protected his whole career, to be honest. This is the whole thing. He went to Minnesota because he's like, dome, check, receivers, check. They're going to let me run a lot of play action, check. That's why he went there, so he could have that nice, familiar...
his alternative was the Jets, so of course he went there.
Well, yeah. A nice stat padding situation. What's Minnesota? So here's the thing. All we talk about is pass game first. And what's Minnesota's pass game going to look like with no Stefon Diggs? They were one of the few teams that was just like, I'm looking for like a 1-2-3 punch. I'm looking for 3 receivers. Minnesota's one of those teams where it's like, I don't care. I've got 1 and 2. They're good enough. Now it's 1, Adam Theilen, 2, Justin Jefferson. Like him, but he's a rookie. What are you going to expect out of him?
Yeah, so last year they ran less 11 personnel than like anybody else in the NFL. They had the most 2 tight end sets in the NFL. Now the question is, was that cause or effect, right? Is that what they want to run in this offense? And the fact that Kevin Stefanski is kind of looks like he's heading in that way with the Browns suggests that at least that's what they want to run, right? As opposed to that was what was enforced upon them by the fact that they didn't have a third receiver. But it probably didn't help, right? So they're well used to not running 3 deep a receiver. They don't do that very often compared to some of these other teams. On the other hand, now they really can't, right? So you've got Adam Theilen, who himself needs to step into a slightly different role, right? You had Stefon Diggs. They were a really interesting duo because there was always this argument of which guy is better. And you could make the case kind of either way. Somebody in a broadcast said it. It might have been Tim Patrick, maybe. Or it might have been somebody completely different. I'm
Mike
just
Patrick?
assigning. No, Tim Patrick, right? He's the
Tim's
49ers
the
dude.
6'5" receiver for the Broncos.
Isn't there also a Tim Patrick? Tim Ryan? I don't know. I'm losing names at this point.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody.
Some 2 first name guy.
Some announcer said, defenses respect Adam Theilen, but they fear Stefon Diggs. Like, he's the guy that actually scares them.
Sounds like word salad to me.
No, it's legit.
No, I know. That's not bad.
And I think that's true. But now Thielen needs to step into this role as being the number 1 guy. And for someone that plays the majority of his trade as a slot receiver, it's not necessarily that easy to do. You now need to be the outside guy. You now need to show you can do that.
And
Jefferson's the same, right?
Clones another guy. How you describe their skill set,
another
right?
guy that did most of his damage in the slot. And then your options for the outside guy, you've got Tajay Sharp. Olabisi Johnson is the guy that's been running there in camp so far. And look, he's not. If that's your second starter, you've got some problems. So they've got to figure that out, right? Who's going to be the second receiver starting, and can they make enough of an impact? And can Adam Theilen be that number 1 guy? I think there's a big part of it that, look, this 2 tight end set thing is still going to be there, right? So Irv Smith in year 2, Kyle Rudolph, those 2 guys are going to have as big an impact potentially as whoever the second receiver is. But yeah, you've taken away arguably your best offensive player and have to replace him with a rookie. That's hard. That's not easy.
So I think all that said, what Green Bay is trying to do with Rodgers, is Cousins like a better proxy for what they're trying to do here? Because like Cousins last year, remember they went to more Kubiak-y type of stuff, a lot more rollout. Cousins was incredible on the bootleg game and all that stuff. Throughout much of the year, Stefon Diggs was complaining because he wasn't getting many targets. And then even when you look at his season, like 99 targets is not a lot across 17 games. It's not like a high volume. Diggs should be getting 140, right? Thielen should be getting 140. That's how good those guys are. And all that said, Cousins had his best season. So even with Adam Thielen hurt and only playing 12 games, Diggs complaining about not seeing volume for a big chunk of the season, and then having 2 pretty good tight ends in Kyle Rudolph and rookie Irv Smith. Cousins spread the ball around. Like, that's what they're trying to achieve in Green Bay, right? Is just like, let's not rely on quarterback receiver. Let's let the scheme dictate this thing.
Yeah, it was that ridiculous sort of cliche or the running joke, right? That like the ideal Kirk Cousins game was like that week 1 against Atlanta where he threw the ball like 11 times or dropped back 11 times, threw it 10 times, completed 8 of them. Like that's the dream game for this offense is that Kirk Cousins attempts like 15 passes and they win the game, right? Because they're just crushing people every other way. I think it's the same idea. Like that's what the Packers would love is that Rodgers throws the ball 20 times, completes 17 of those for like 250 yards and a couple of scores.
Yep.
But like that's what a few of these teams in the NFL are shooting for in terms of their ideal dream scenario. The Vikings were actually closer to realizing it last year. But the reason I think that they got worse this offseason is they traded away arguably their best offensive player. And I think that's not always a bad idea necessarily, but I think when you immediately have to replace him with the collateral that you just traded for him, it's bad. Because there's no way.
We got to spend this first rounder on Justin Jefferson and hope he's close.
Yes. So the chance of Justin Jefferson being as good as Stefon Diggs are tiny. And even if Justin Jefferson ends up being a pretty good player, just the nature of draft picks and how successful they are, the chance of him plugging that up immediately are almost nothing. And then the secondary was kind of the same thing. You let like your entire cornerback group walk out of the door. Now, admittedly, they weren't playing particularly well, but you lost all of them, and you're replacing them with rookies. Again, like the chances of the rookies being better than even what left Minnesota last year are not high. And then you've got a couple other like pretty obvious holes in the roster as well that didn't necessarily got addressed or did. And then the guy that you addressed them with opted out of the season, and you're still screwed.
So all that said, Cousins, despite having lesser playmakers overall, had the best season of his career. Coming into the year, we had said, look, he's only had one top 10 finish in PFF grading. This became his second. It also started out disastrous. He only had those 11 dropbacks, as you mentioned, against Atlanta. That was fine. But then the next week against Green Bay, horrible. 14 of 32, should have had about 4 picks and had 2 ridiculous fumbles. Had a 25 grade. But from that point on, Cousins was really, really good. But there was still... Cousins always seems to like get over the hump, but like he just like crawls over the hump instead of jumping over it. Like the hump being like, hey, win a Monday Night Football game, win a primetime game, win a game that people don't expect you to win. Like that started happening a little bit, right? They beat, was it Seattle?
If you take out that Week 2 game against the Packers, Cousins was the number 1 graded quarterback last year. Passing grade.
Yeah,
overall was less because obviously he doesn't run ever.
And when he did run, he was fumbling.
Yeah.
Crushed his grade. So they got over the hump with like a few key wins. And the Denver game when they made the huge comeback, like there were these like check marks, like little check marks that Kirk hit. But still, crunch time, Green Bay Week 16, you got the division on the line and all that stuff. And he's got a 56 grade, averaging 3.9 yards per attempt in that game, taking 5 sacks. And then in the divisional round against the Niners, there was that one deep throw, and that was it, 52.9 grade. So there's still like, you're leaving a lot on the table in crunch time, even though there's always like, maybe that's your signature win. Maybe that's your signature win. Like he's had a few of those through the years. Like I remember even before Minnesota signed him, like he goes up to Seattle with Washington and a bad offensive line, and he makes a ton of big throws that like helped convince Minnesota he was their guy going forward. There's still like a little bit lacking there with Cousins, though.
Yeah, there's always this feeling with Cousins that there's something missing. And it's not always easy to identify exactly what it is, because you can, like on almost everything, you can identify. Like the idea that, hey, he didn't win a primetime game against, there's these stats where he's like 1 for 23 or something.
Yeah, sorry, they lost against Seattle. There was one primetime game or whatever that he won, right? That was significant. Go ahead.
There's like this, there was this stat that he was like 1 for 23 against, a good team on prime time or whatever.
Dallas, they beat Dallas
it's like,
on prime time.
I don't think those were necessarily legitimate numbers, right? I think it's just a case of like, look, he was never on a particularly good team, and when you face better teams, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
It's just the way it was working out, right? But it's like the Derek Carr thing, right? There's something missing from him, and I think that's why for years you get this idea of intangibles, right? Quarterback intangibles. We can't quite articulate what it is, but you kind of know it when you see it. Yeah. And I think that works the other way as well. Like Cousins is 90% of a great quarterback, but the 10% that's missing, it's really hard to pin down exactly what it is, but it's that brain fart that when he was supposed to spike the ball, he takes a knee instead, right? There's just something not there that should be, and it's why you can never fully buy in to Kirk Cousins. There's just something not there in him that no matter how good he gets at everything else, and he may end up getting even better this year, becoming a consistent top 5 quarterback every single week, you just know, like there's that feeling. There's something not there, and when you need him to pull you out of a fire, he's probably not going to. He's probably not going to be there.
He's probably not going to be there for the fire. Offensive line-wise, they were not great in pass protection last year. I don't know if you're going to expect that this year. Riley Reif, overall has graded okay, but in, true pass sets and times when you just have to pass, when you're not protected by play action and all that stuff, he's a little bit below average instead of that perfectly average left tackle, I think. Brian O'Neill's become pretty good. Garrett Bradbury has to play better, the 2019 first-round pick. And then my boy Dalvin Cook, assuming they get a contract worked out.
Which has gone on hold at the moment.
For whatever the run game's worth, when you do have a Kubiak scheme and you're going to put a running back into space, there's nobody in the NFL I'd rather in space right now than probably Saquon Barkley or Dalvin Cook.
Yeah,
so
he's really good.
Yeah, Cook can run the ball.
Yeah, that contract negotiation appears to have stalled, and now they're going to be running into a season where potentially the cap is lower. Like he's destined to get screwed, I think, out of this deal. And he's an unfortunate, I think, loser of the fact that running back position is devalued and replaceability and all this kind of stuff, particularly when you have an Alexander Mattison already there. Like, I don't see a way that he comes out of that contract negotiation in a great scenario, which is obviously what he wants. Like the idea way back when they started negotiations, and he used the term something like, look, he just wants a fair deal, something like that, you know what I mean? It's like he wasn't even out there saying, hey, I want market setting money, I want to be like, he was like, I just want something better than the crappy contract I'm on right now. It was like, look, just throw me a bone here. Like, I think he knows that he's not going to get the big deal that he wants.
Offense is going to be better or worse this year?
Worse. I mean, Stefon Diggs is one of the better receivers in the NFL, and he's not there anymore. How do you get better than?
So they're worse offensively.
Yes.
Defensively, we mentioned this around draft time. I think they did as well as they could in the draft. And I'm always fascinated by team building and just like the point that a team is at a certain point, right? Like the Vikings have been the team that's kind of been like trying to hold on to this really good nucleus of players that peaked really in 2017 when they made it to the NFC Championship. That was their peak, and they've been trying to hold on. We saw this from the Niners early last decade. They just had like this nucleus of like 10 guys, and eventually you can't keep all of them, or they get old, or you lose it. And the Vikings are there, and they have been the last couple of years. Like you lose a couple players here and there, and now it looks like a completely different team. The trouble with that is when you don't trade down and get 700 draft picks to replace those guys. So the Vikings actually did that. And they've added all sorts of new faces into the secondary. Jeff Gladney in the first round at corner, Cameron Dantzler in the third round, depending on which team account you're looking at. And you never know how good he's doing at training camp. Warren Sharp called him out. Could be getting torched. Could be awesome. You never know. Anyway, my point is they've added a ton of faces to this defense, and that's been needed, but there could be some growing pains.
They boxed themselves into a corner, and they had a draft where they needed to fill 3 or 4 critical spots with their picks, right? And I think they did about as well as humanly possible at filling those spots.
Right.
But again, just the nature of draft picks, the idea that you're going to bat 1,000 on those 4 important picks is almost zero. It's not going to happen.
Plus,
right?
we're in a year where it's like, how much can you truly expect from rookies?
The year, like the way things went, COVID, et cetera, blasting everything sideways doesn't help. But even just in a vacuum, right? The idea that like you're going to bat 1,000 on the 4 picks that you wound up needing to hit to fill starting positions or whatever, it's a tiny landing spot to hit, and it's just not going to happen. So it's like at least one of those, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe all 4 of them are not going to pan out, at which point you have a hole that's going to be a problem. You know college football better than me. Has Cameron Dantzler always had the nickname The Needle? Because that's a phenomenal nickname for a guy that's built like him.
Because he's built like a
needle.
needle.
I saw that.
He's very skinny.
Just recently in all the training camp videos and stuff. He's been getting nicknamed The Needle, which I think is just outstanding.
The baseball equivalent, you know what a fungo is? A fungo bat?
No.
So a fungo, like a normal bat is like 33 inches, say 30 ounces or whatever.
Uh-huh.
A fungo is longer
and
skinnier and light, and you use it to just hit ground balls, as practice. It's like a practice bat, just for like a coach. So it's a long, skinny bat. So if you had a guy with Dantzler's physique, you'd say, who dressed the fungo?
I see.
That's the baseball joke.
You baseball guys are real cards,
Real funny. Yeah. Real funny guys, baseball.
Dantzler, I think, is genuinely intriguing, right? 3rd round pick, but a guy who fell to the 3rd round because he was like 180 pounds and ran like a 4.6, right? But
on my computer, it was like 4.2.
Well, so the thing is, he did that at the combine.
Oh, please don't. Let's not get into it.
No. Look, it's legit. He ran a 4.6 because he bulked up, right? This guy, like he's absurdly skinny for
Bulked
a
up
cornerback,
needle.
right? 6 whatever he is, but incredibly skinny. And so the big concern with a guy like that is, well, can he pack on enough weight to play in the NFL? So he tried to add weight to run to work out, show up at the combine to show he could be an NFL-sized player. And when he did that, he ran like a pig. So it didn't help, right? In fact, if anything, it hurt more than it did anything. So then he obviously lost some of the weight, did his own pro day stuff, and the number was significantly better. But my point is, like, this is a guy who, through his college career, gave up like 40% of the passes thrown his way were caught. He played LSU and Alabama last year, and in those 2 games combined, gave up 21 yards in coverage. This is a guy that can cover, and can cover against legitimate athletes like Jamar Chase, arguably the best college receiver in the landscape, and the Alabama guys, all of whom are amazing,
right.
and at least 2 of whom run like 4.2s, right?
Yeah.
So him running like a pig didn't show up in those games. Like, he can cover that level of athlete. And then training camp, okay, there's some bad plays in there as well. It's training camp, that's going to happen. But like the thing that I tweeted was not even the play that he made, but like Adam Theilen went up to Mike Zimmer after practice and said 27 is going to be really good. Like, that guy can play.
Yeah.
So like the fact that happened, like a player went out of his way to tell the coach, who then relayed it to media, as opposed to the guy went out of his way to talk him up to the media.
Right.
Like, that he went out of his way to identify that guy as a guy that can play is big, particularly when I think that he's the one guy in that group that it's built to play outside. Mike Hughes, probably even Jeff Gladney are maybe more suited to be slot guys.
I like Gladney out there. I mean, he could definitely get bodied out there.
Right. Whereas Dantzler, I think, is built to play on the edge, and they need that.
Gladney was battle tested.
Yes.
That's the word I always said in the Big 12. And he was going up against Denzel Mims and Wallace from Oklahoma State. He was going up against good receivers every single week and getting targeted like 8 to 10 times and all that. So, I mean, look, talking about wide range of outcomes, that's kind of been one of the stories. That's our way of hedging and just saying, we don't know. It's the NFL. We don't know how this is going to go. But it's a wide range for the Minnesota secondary with Mike Hughes, Cameron Dantzler, Jeff Gladney as the key guys that they need contributions from this year. And then combine that with Harrison Smith and Anthony Harris, the best safety duo in the league.
Helps. That
really
does
helps.
help.
It absolutely does. My question is, do they tap into Harrison Smith's versatility a little bit more? Do they bring him down to cover the slot more? Do they do they move him around more? And because Anthony Harris has that legit free safety range, do you play more single high instead of too high, or do you just play a ton of too high to like protect?
That's what
corners,
I think they'll do. I think they'll carry on as they have been and rely on the fact that Mike Zimmer can coach cornerbacks and hope it gets them to a level where they're not a liability. The Vikings also had, I think, one of the most significant opt-outs in terms of impacting a team of anybody. They signed Michael Pierce to be the new Linval Joseph, effectively, and Michael Pierce opts out. And now they have the worst interior group of players in the NFL. Like Shamar Stephen, Jaleel Johnson, like Jalen Holmes has been playing outside a lot. Like Hercules Mataafa is still not big.
Right. He's trying to bulk up.
Right.
Playing
It's
there.
like that is a horrible looking group of interior defenders, and they actually need that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's even more. Everson Griffin's gone now, and even just from an edge rush standpoint, there's a lot of pressure on Donnell Hunter, who for much of his Minnesota run has been, the complementary piece. He went from the number 3 rusher and then to the number, 1A rusher, with Griffin, and now it's like, hey, you're the guy. Like, you're the only guy that we really trust getting after the quarterback. So I mean, Minnesota's front seven has slowly depleted the last couple of years. Their secondary has slowly depleted with Trey Waynes moving on, with Xavier Rhodes not only moving on, but being a shell of himself last season. Yeah. So, the Vikings could land everywhere, but they do look like on paper, it was this rebuild. I mean, they're rebuilding. But they also have, in this NFC North where everybody got worse, they're still going to be competitive.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not a strong division, I think, overall, which is going to help them. But potentially got worse on offense. You probably got worse on defense in the secondary, even though your group of cornerbacks was not great. Like Xavier Rhodes last season was garbage. Trey Waynes was solid-ish as a starter. Mackenzie Alexander actually played pretty well in the slot. So somehow that trio needs to be replaced by a combination of Gladney, Dantzler, Holton Hill, and Mike Hughes, right? Maybe there's a group in there that's better than what left, but there's also a pretty good chance there isn't. And then they need to replace Everson Griffin with Adenigbo, and then somehow patch up the fact that there's no defensive tackle that can play worth a lick. So the defense is going to struggle. Like, it's relying on the fact that Mike Zimmer is one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL.
He's been
to
good.
Salvage what's been there.
Where did we rank their we ranked their defensive line 24th. And that's like really on the strength of Donnell Hunter really emerging and becoming one of the, going from a guy that had a lot of sacks to a guy that's actually winning at a high percentage as well, not just, finishing plays. But 24th defensive line, 21st for secondary, but because of the just lack of playing time that all their corners have, 21st could end up 32nd, or it could end up, 15th, 12th. It could end up pretty good. So Vikings are all over the place, man. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent still on this team, but there's suddenly a ton of holes that weren't there, a couple of years ago. I mean, you think in 2017, this was maybe the best roster in the NFL. They came up short in the NFC Championship game. And since then, I think they've been steadily eroding the talent core of the roster. You've still got a quarterback. You've still got some, impact playmakers like Adam Theilen, Irv Smith, potentially Dalvin Cook. You've got some quality players on defense, the safety duo that's amazing.
Eric Kendricks was awesome last year.
Right. And again, that's another one that's giant outlier. Can he sustain that? Even Donnell Hunter was kind of an outlier last season compared with his usual baseline. Was that him finally becoming the realization
Vikings,
of his talent?
Cousins had a career year. Donnell Hunter had a career year.
Right.
Eric Kendricks had a career year.
A lot of them.
Dalvin Cook had a career year because he actually stayed on the field most of the time. Wow, you heard it here first. Vikings win in 4 games.
I mean, anytime you have that many guys who are coming off career years, it's a legitimate concern that, well, what happens if this year they don't all do that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Then you immediately take a big step back, even independent of the turnover on the roster, like the other spots that you now need to replace. So, I think this team should probably take a pretty significant step back. The only question is how much can Zimmer and the talent that's still there mitigate it?
It's a fascinating division. I think there's a ton of storylines from Rodgers to Stafford. More Nick Foles data points. I've been just give me more Nick Foles data points. We'll figure out what he is at some point in his career. And then Cousins and the Vikings rebuild. That'll do it for us. NFC North preview. Again, the first 5 divisions, we hit the entire AFC and then the NFC East. It's all wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching here on YouTube. We got 2 more divisions to get through, and then we'll just it's almost season time. It's almost ready to start.
Actual football.
If you're getting ready for the season, the only place to do it is pff.com. Grab your Edge or Elite package if you're getting ready for your fantasy draft. Our guys have worked hard on redraft this year, so if you're drafting right now, if you're in Dynasty or Dynasty leagues. If you're in best ball, all of that stuff, it's all covered at pff.com. Edge and Elite package has the best fantasy tools you can find. And then don't forget college football. If you want all of our college football grades dating back to 2014, there's also I think there's some Easter eggs in there too for some of the historical quarterbacks like Russell Wilson at NC State and Andrew Luck at Stanford. I'm pretty sure it's all in there. So go check it out. CFB25. CFB25 is your promo code for 25% off at pff.com for the new college subscription package.
Nice.
All right, guys. What's today? Thursday? All right, we'll see you Monday with more PFF NFL podcast.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.